Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Great Goddess. Praise be to Goddess. Praise be to Goddess. Well, here it is another Wednesday, and today is a holiday for me. It's a holiday. It's the first day of the Festival of the Maiden. And the first day of the Festival of the Maiden, I've called it breakfast. Breakfast is a great name because it's breaking the fast of purification. Purification is sort of a fast because there's certain foods you eliminate and you maintain a certain diet, and you could even fast during the day. So that's one option. So it is breaking the fast. So today is breakfast. And on breakfast, I recommend that you have a feast. You can order out from your favorite restaurant. I recommend that you order out from your favorite restaurant and that you have a celebration with your family. Order any kind of food, whatever your favorite food is. So you don't have to have breakfast foods, get it? You don't have to have breakfast foods on breakfast. You can have any food you want. Any food, including animal food. Don't recommend cannibalism. Just a joke. I know there are people who are thinking about being cannibals, but that's forbidden. But you can have any food other than that you want on breakfast. Any food at all. So go ahead and enjoy yourself with your family. Go ahead and order whatever food you want from whatever restaurant you want. And enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself on breakfast. Now for today, for my usual breakfast speech, doing something a little different this year for breakfast, for speech. Today I'm going to talk to you about my history professor and my meeting with her and how it went. Now, I have a confession to make. I'm kind of embarrassed by this confession. I've been neglecting my history homework. And one of the reasons I'm neglecting my history homework is because I absolutely hate the subject matter. Okay, there's a very strong liberal slant. It's a very, very strong liberal slant. And even if I weren't, leaning toward the conservative, and I only lean toward the conservative. I'm not a true conservative, you understand. Even then, I see that there's a certain amount of unfairness to it. It's not fair play. It's not fair play, and it's not giving equal time. So I don't like that. I don't like that it's unfair. I don't like that it's not fair play, and I don't like it that they're not giving equal time to the other side, or to anywhere in the middle. Anywhere along the political spectrum. They aren't giving equal time, and they're not playing fair. So that makes me hate the class. I really do. I really hate my history class. It's just so unfair, and I'm not learning any dates. I'm not learning any figures. I'm getting to that. So, a little bit about my history professor, okay? She's a very beautiful woman. Oh boy, she's gorgeous. And during my meeting with her, I was expecting great things because, she's gorgeous. She's obviously a very talented, brilliant woman. She makes a lot of spelling errors. Oh my gosh, I can't even believe that people can still become professors nowadays with so many spelling errors. She makes so many spelling errors, so many grammatical errors. But during my meeting with her, she talked a mile a minute. Yap, 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 yap. And it was completely, I listened very carefully, okay? I'm honest with you. I listened extremely closely to what she was saying. I tried to follow what she was saying. She was going yap, 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 yap. I couldn't understand 70% of what she was saying. Okay, it was Greek to me, and I'm not saying that she didn't say something intelligent because she was talking so fast it was very difficult to understand her. But she sounded incoherent. Be honest with you, this professor sounded completely incoherent. She sounded like, I mean, it was in English. It was English words, but the way she strung them together made no sense. So she wasn't the greatest communicator. And maybe it made sense to her what she was saying. Maybe in somewhere in her mind what she was saying made sense or was coherent to herself. But for me, I couldn't understand what she was saying at all. I just made out a few things from what she was saying, but the rest of it just sounded completely incoherent, and I couldn't make out what she was saying. I couldn't follow her. Maybe she's just too brilliant for me, and someone who's much more intelligent than me would have been able to follow her. But I could not follow her, and I didn't know what she was trying to say. So, if I don't know what she was trying to say, and I couldn't follow her, then she can't claim to be the best communicator. I wrote her later and told her, could you please slow down and speak in simple layman's terms so that I can understand you, because I could not make out what she was saying. And she apologized and said since she's been all online, her speech has speeded up. Speeds up when she's not with students regularly and when she's not regularly practicing her public speaking. I could not understand her at all. It was impossible to understand her. So, but I did make out some words and some phrases, and I was able to piece together what she was talking about or what she was discussing. So, and also another thing, the fact that she was talking so fast may have been because I made her nervous. I made some statements that may have made her extremely nervous. I told her, well, I don't like to use extreme language. I avoid using extreme language. But this material that I'm reading sounds anti-American. Sounds very, very negative. Extremely negative content. There was nothing positive in there at all. Nothing positive. It was all negative content. It was anti-American or un-American. And another thing, seemed to be promoting socialism. And it was a very strong promoting socialist slant. It was a very strong socialist slant where it was promoting socialism. And she said, well, regarding socialism, that she began talking about this mayor in Oklahoma that lived 100 years ago. She was saying that he was considered highly respectable, that people loved him, people thought he was great, and that this mayor in Oklahoma that was a socialist was so beloved, and that he almost became president, and that socialism was a big deal back then, that most people were socialists back then, and that socialism was beloved, and it was considered a very highly respectable, that didn't become unrespectable until later, and that it was widely accepted. And another thing she said was that socialism has changed a lot. She emphasized this without wanting to go into detail. She didn't want to go into detail. She didn't want to go there. Okay, she did not want to discuss the particulars at all. That makes me suspicious of her. But she didn't want to discuss the particulars. She didn't want to discuss the details. She didn't want to discuss even what she meant by socialism or what socialism is or what it was. She kept making the argument over and over and over, kind of chanting it to herself, repeating it to herself, that that it was taken out of historical context, and that socialism meant something different back then than it does now. And so it was a different form of socialism, it was a different kind of socialism, and it meant something different to the people of the time. And so you couldn't compare it to today's socialism at all. There was something different. I said, oh, but wasn't holding all property in common a feature of socialism from the very beginning? She completely ignored that comment. She completely avoided it, evaded it. She wouldn't comment. She wouldn't comment on that. Because obviously, if she had commented on it, it would have looked really bad for her. So, and she admitted at some point, which was a breath of fresh air, it was refreshing, that she admitted that yes, she had chosen the textbook that she used for us. She made an excuse. She said, well, it's a free textbook and it's an online textbook. So because it was a free online textbook, I chose it to save my students some money. So big excuse, right? Big excuse to save some money on the textbook. I would have preferred to have a hard copy textbook that I could pass on to my children and my children's children if it was good enough, if it was a valid textbook, and if I liked it. She didn't do that. She didn't bother. She wanted to save her students some money, so she chose a socialist online textbook. It's a big school, big name school, one of the most prestigious schools, if not the most prestigious school in the entire nation. So, and that's America. So she did pick this. You should know that based upon what this school is, socialism has gone mainstream. Yes, it has, at least as far as schools go, and as far as college goes, and as far as your children go. They are pushing socialism down your child's throat. I'm serious. I'm not lying to you about this. They're pushing socialism so hard, and they're not telling people what socialism is, because if they knew what socialism is, they would reject it right away. They're just using the word socialism and totally setting it up in such a way and having the wording so cleverly arranged that socialism is being promoted. It's just a Bible of socialism, this textbook. It's promoting socialism without any questioning, without allowing the reader to question what is being written. It's just written in such a way that you're not allowed to question, and you don't want to question unless you're from the other side of the political spectrum, and then you hate the book. You hate it because it's not giving you any option whatsoever to choose what you believe. It's just not an option. It's just setting the whole thing up as if socialism is a panacea that's the solution to all ills. That's the way it's written. And she told me, this history professor told me again and again and again, I recommend then that if you don't like that you write to the editors of the textbook. I recommend that you write to the editors of the textbook and tell them about your objections. Tell them that it sounds as if they're promoting socialism. Give them examples. Give them examples of how it's un-American or anti-American. Give them examples of how negative it is. Give them examples for all of your objections and all the things that you find unpleasant about this. And yeah, but lady, you chose the textbook. That was your idea. Yeah, that was your idea. You chose the textbook. That was the textbook you wanted. So apparently she really likes it. She really agrees with everything they're saying. Because why else would she have chosen it? Yeah, she's promoting socialism, but she was very, very nervous talking to me. Extremely nervous. You know why she was nervous? The reason that she was nervous was because I was opposing her viewpoint. And the fact that she was saying how acceptable socialism was shows that she really secretly is a socialist or a socialist sympathizer. And also the fact that she said that, well, socialism meant something different back then than it does now. She was being deceptive. Okay, she was disseminating. She was being deceptive, and she was being deceptive and a Decepticon. The Decepticons. She was lying. She was basically lying without giving a lie outright. She was deceiving. She was misleading. She was leading me down the wrong path, or down the garden path, by saying it was so different, but she wouldn't give me an example of any of the differences. Here she's the expert, and she won't give me an example of any differences. Why? Because it would look really bad for her. It would be an unpleasant discussion for her, and she didn't want to go there. But you should know how American history has changed. Number one change you should know. Actually, I shouldn't go like this, right? It makes people uncomfortable. I should go like this. Like one of those crazy politicians goes like this. Like this. Number one thing that's changed. Number one thing that's changed is that they are no longer teaching your kid dates, places, names. Dates, places, names have been completely wiped from the record. They don't want your kid doing any rote memorization. Why? Why don't they want your kids doing any rote memorization? Well, they say kids don't like it. They don't like it. They find it unpleasant, and it's not even necessary. All you need to know is the social issues at hand. That's all that's important, is the social issues at hand and general ideas. And the names, places, and dates aren't important. They're not important enough to teach your child. So we're going to eliminate them. We're going to eliminate them. We're not going to teach names, places, and dates anymore. We're just going to teach them ideas and concepts, and we're not even going to give them a time frame or a framework of the times that we're talking about, or when the eras were, so you can visualize them. We're not going to do any of that. We're just going to eliminate names, places, and dates from the history books. Well, are there any advantages to rote memorization? You betcha. Because rote memorization makes the mind stronger. Makes the mind stronger. It makes the memory stronger. You have a strong mind, a strong memory. You become a more powerful person. So really what they want to do is they want to rob the students of their power, of their mental powers, of their mental acuity. They don't want them to have a strong memory. The last thing they want is these students to have a strong memory or strong rote memorization. Why would they do this? Well, why do you think they would do this? Can you think of a few reasons why? I'll bet I could think of a few reasons why. Right off the top of my head. If you have a weak memory, you don't remember what the politicians have done to you the year before, 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, 24 years ago. You don't remember. You can't remember because you have such a weak memory. And you don't even bother remembering because you've never been taught that memorization is even important. It's not even something you value. So if you don't value memorizing details, if you don't value rote memorization, if you don't value names, places, and dates, and actual events, if that's not of value to you and that's not of concern to you, ever, then you can't do a damn thing to those politicians. You don't even have the power to do anything to those politicians. They become the Teflon presidents. The Teflon presidents of the past and present and future. They become Teflon. Just like Ronald Reagan, everything just wipes away so clean, and they come off with a perfect record because nobody knows what they did. Nobody knows what they did because no one can remember, because they've been robbed of memory training and even of valuing rote memorization. It's considered verboten, and it's considered worthless. So that's a major way that the history books have changed. Another way the history, the way it's taught, has changed is that there's a very strong liberal slant. It's a very strong liberal slant, and socialism is being promoted. So you should know that there's a liberal slant and that socialism is being promoted. Another thing that's happened is that they've almost virtually eliminated the presidents. They don't talk about the presidents. They don't talk about the presidential administrations. They don't talk about what the presidents did or who the names of their advisors were or things that they did. They don't teach them any of that. They don't teach them names, dates, and places, and they don't teach them about the presidents at all. In fact, they consider the presidents, according to my history professor, this was the reason she gave, because the presidents were rather inconsequential in the big picture. Yeah, the presidents, they didn't really matter to history that much. They didn't really matter to history that much. They were inconsequential. They weren't important. So because they weren't important, because the Congresses were more important than the presidents, we're not going to place an emphasis on the presidents or the presidential administrations. We're not even going to teach your kids to memorize the names of the presidents anymore, because the presidents were inconsequential. So we're not going to teach them the names of presidents. We're not even going to use the names of the presidents in the history books. And this is something I noticed right away, that they weren't mentioning the names of the presidents or the time or the dates that they were in office for these particular time periods. They eliminated that. And because they don't consider the presidents important. Presidents aren't important. Those are some dead white guys, right? Guess who is important? Guess who's in? Guess who they are talking about? Talking about activists. Activists past and present. Only activists are important. What kind of activists? Black activists, Hispanic and minority activists like Asian activists and Hispanic activists, and women. That's all they talk about now, is activists. Activists, political commentators, political opponents of the establishment, people who object to things the president was doing, and they don't even name the president or what they were doing. They just name the activists and what they were about. So it's all about activists. That's the new history, folks. That's the new history that your kids are being taught. Nothing about America except the worst of America. Like conspicuous consumption. You hear about that. And they don't even use the words conspicuous consumption because they don't want to teach your kids big words. They don't want them having big words or knowing more vocabulary. They just use the most basic language to describe the rise of consumer culture. And then that's a negative. They just name all the negatives or the things that they consider negatives and frame them in a negative light as being harmful or things to be avoided or things that are undesirable. Yeah, you're going to own nothing in the future, and then you'll all be happy, right? You're going to own nothing in the future, and then your life will be so perfect, and you'll be happy. So, activists are in. Black and women activists specifically are in. focus big time on African Americans and big time on women. It's all they focus on now is African Americans and women. Um, and of course the Native American. And the presidents don't get named. The presidents are out. Times, dates, and places are out. And presidential administrations and what they accomplished are out. They're not teaching your kids much history at all, or else it's a different kind of history book. It's a different kind of history book altogether. It's a socialist propaganda history book. It's not fair. It's not balanced. It's not. It doesn't give. It's not equal. Doesn't give equal time. It's not fair play. Your kids are being dumbed down. And it's the worst thing that's ever happened to this country. It's happening to history. Why would I choose to discuss this on the first day of the Festival of the Maiden? Well, it's your kids, right? I mean, they're almost adults by the time they take history class, but they do teach social studies still. It's the kids. It's the children. This is a very dark turn in America's history when the children are not being taught their history. So what can we do for the children? Well, we're going to have to teach them history at home because they're not getting that at school. They're not getting what they need at school, so we're going to have to teach history at home. In fact, considering the direction of education, I would just recommend schooling your kids at home anyway. Just homeschool them. They'll be doing so much better and they'll have a better head start in life, especially if you happen to be an intelligent person. Your kids go to school and it's a dumb factory. They get dumb drilled into their heads and then they come out the other end, not dumb, but much less intelligent and never reaching their full potential that they could have reached if they had been schooled differently. Remember that, folks. Your kids being dumbed down in history, in mathematics, in science, in English, practically every single topic you care to consider or imagine. Your kids are being dumbed down. Going into a dumb factory to turn them into dummies, and they come out the other end not as intelligent or gifted or bright or brilliant as they could have been. Their potential gets wasted. By the time they're 18 years old, it's too late to do anything about it. I recommend you school your kids at home if you can. It's worth the expense. It's worth every penny. Spare no expense on your kids, and you can, whatever material you gather from the year before, you can use on the younger child next year. You don't have to throw that stuff away, so it can be reused. Please do this. Please homeschool your kids. Once they get to anywhere from middle school to high school, you could send them to a private school. I would recommend, really recommend sending your kids to a private school for high school. And it's worth the expense to send them. It may be expensive, but it's worth it to send them to a private school. Even the most run of the mill private school, like a Lutheran school, you get I know you may not like sending your kids to a Lutheran school but it's cheaper. It's cheaper sending them to a Lutheran school, but you may not approve if you're a goddess worshiper, but guess what? Your kids learn about the Christian religion. They learn about what is taught by the Christian religion, and they get a good grounding, gives them a good basis for understanding this country. And also they get a very superior education, a much better education than they're getting in the public schools. Oh my gosh, what have they done to our public schools? So that's it. I recommend schooling your kids at home. Kids nowadays, it's not their fault. It really isn't their fault that they're not learning these things. It's not their fault They've been indoctrinated to make good activists, to love activism. These activists are their heroes. The American presidents aren't their heroes anymore. Those are the villains. Those are the villains. Those are the bad guys. And the multimillionaires, including Carnegie, gave away his whole fortune for public works and public libraries and everything. He's a villain, and they're all villains. All the captains of industry were villains. The only good guys are these activists, black activists and women activists. That's all they learn about now. And they come out of public school as activists, and they're liberal activists. And all these liberal activists want, is to have a riot and to cause mayhem and chaos in the streets. So now you know where that comes from. They're training your kids to be activists right in school. When they take them away from you every day and you go to work, they're training your kids to be activists. Please do something. Please do something. Take your kids out of public school. Put them in private school. If you have to work all the time, put them in private school. Hire a private tutor for them, or teach them yourself at home. You can, if you can't afford a private tutor or private school, you could hire, for example, a nanny for your kids, a babysitter while you're at work, and then teach your kids when you get home. Spend a few hours with them when you get home from work and teach them. It will make a big, big difference in their lives. They'll be ahead of the curve as far as other kids. They'll have a superior education. They'll have a better education. They'll be ahead of the curve. They might even become the leaders of tomorrow, since there won't be anyone left to be a leader that's coming out of these public schools. And it is a dumb factory. It made me less intelligent going to public school, for sure. For sure it made me less intelligent. There were so many things that I didn't learn, or so many quiet times, quiet periods, and times in between when I wasn't learning anything, when I just had to be patient. When I had to wait, when the waiting got unbearable, when the time going around became unbearable. And then I found out that I was just like a slave. It's like a slave in 7 years a slave, just staring, waiting for the time to go by, and didn't learn a damn thing in public school. The same thing will happen to your kids. It's a hell factory for kids. It's hell for kids. Placing your kids in hell. It's a prison for kids. I wouldn't send my kids there, and I don't think you should either. So that's it for now. Have a terrific breakfast, everyone. Have a feast with your family. Indulge. Enjoy the end of Purification. And I'll see you next time.